Hi guys, welcome to the fourth blog in my experienced teacher process for accreditation. As you can see on this page, my literature review and project proposal are in. It's the last day of term. We've had TPL today, hence no tie, and I managed to get them in today on the day that they were due in. So good stuff. I'm going to talk about the literature review in this video. In another video, I'll talk about the project proposal. So I previously recorded my initial thoughts on the literature review, basically before I'd really done much of it. Now I've got to the end of it, and what a process it is. I'll just talk through the process and some of the things that I found helpful in the process. Obviously, I had to read lots. As I talked about in the previous video, being a teacher means that we don't have access to a lot of the resources or the libraries of research information. Fortunately, I was able to find a colleague at school who's doing a master's at the moment, so I was able to email him the names of the papers that I wanted, and he was able to download and send them to me. So without that access, I don't know how I actually would have done this whole process. So this is the addresses. The 7.2 is the the literature review. No, that's a proposal, 7.2. And the 8.5a, which is behind my head at the moment, is from the literature review. So I'll just talk through how I did the literature review and some tips. So firstly, I read heaps of stuff. And I was reading heaps of stuff and highlighting heaps of stuff and getting my head around what it's like, thinking of some sort of story of what I can actually tell about this, and it wasn't coming to me. Now there's a couple of documents that come from ISTA that are about what a literature review is and how it works. So this is one of them, what it is and how to do it. Another one is this one, a step-by-step guide to conducting a literature review, which talks about the different things that you want to have in your literature review, talks about how to use Google Scholar. So there's some relevant stuff in there, but I just didn't have my head around it entirely. So I just went onto YouTube and I watched some videos on literature reviews, and there's some from a couple of different universities that have been put together by librarians who obviously help out with this sort of stuff on a regular basis, and I found that really helpful. In particular, something that I found, and it wasn't until I'd read a whole heap of other stuff that I actually watched this video, because I wasn't actually sure, putting like the pen to paper, what to actually start writing. And that was that when you're reading a paper, read the abstract, and the abstract will tell you whether you should be able to work out from the abstract whether you want to read this paper. And then once you get the paper and decide you're going to read it, read the introduction and read the conclusion. So as far as the methodology and the results go, you can skip those at first, and then if you find stuff that you like in the introduction and the conclusion, then you can go back and have a look at how that study was actually conducted and the results of that study. Fair warning, the results section of studies and journals is absolutely crazy to read. Like, I read numerous papers where it could have been written in another language once they started to get into the statistical relevance. And I studied stats at uni, but it was a while ago, and it was, I was just reading it going, no, I don't know what any of that means. So don't worry too much about that stuff. It's all technical jargon, just firstly concentrate on that introduction and conclusion, and then that'll give you an idea whether you want to read the whole thing. So once I did that, I basically sat down and went, all right, what's the sort of structure? How am I going to walk this through? And so I decided I'd do an introduction, then talk about my classroom setup as it is, so with the flipped and gamified, and then talk about the two parts to this self-paced mastery, self-paced learning and mastery learning. There's not a lot of stuff out there on self-paced mastery as a together thing, so I had to split it up into the two, and then look at a conclusion to tie it all together. So I put this all together, and they also provide a checklist for you as to what you need to include. So definitions of words, reasons for reviewing, explanation of organization and sequence, and a statement to the focus. I actually, to be honest, when I did my first draft, I didn't look at this too much. I probably should have looked at it more. So my first draft, and this was something that was really hard for me. My wife went away for the weekend with the kids, and I sat down. I came into work both days and did stupid long-hour days. Read a whole heap of stuff, bashed out I think it was 1,500 words in the end, and got to the end and went, yes, I'm there. I'm almost there anyway. And I sent it to my supervisor, and she said, well, did you actually have a look at this checklist? And I went, oh yeah, well, I read that at the start, but I didn't have it with me as I was going through. And there was a whole heap of stuff that I didn't actually cover in the checklist. So that was a bit of a pain. And this is something that's happened basically with every revision I've done. I've done a draft, put it all together, gone, yes, it's done, and then given it to my supervisor, and both of my supervisors have been like, no, this isn't done. So I've had to go back and do it again. And as far as the drafting process goes, it's something we try and encourage in our students. This sort of, don't just do the first thing and submit that. It's get better and better. But on the other side of it, it's really crushing when you get something back and it's like, no, this is rubbish, do it again. And it's not the whole thing again, but it may as well be in your mind. So that was a bit of a pain. The other thing, so anyway, first draft, yep, this is my first draft, so it looked a bit like this. Now, another big thing in the first draft is that it didn't talk about my project very much. I did it as a sort of straight down the line, what is the literature, and then at the end said, oh yeah, and I'm going to do a project on this, and it's going to look at the gap in the body of research. But that didn't have enough information about my actual project in it. So I found that I was putting a lot of information about the project that I'm doing into the literature review, which I found weird. I think I've done one literature review before this, and that was years ago. But it felt weird reviewing the literature, but also talking about my project, because that I felt that should be separate. So yeah, something to be mindful of there. So I put that in to come up with this one. So this was my the final copy of my literature review, and I'll put links to this in the show notes so that you can, if you want, have a look at the different iterations. More importantly, probably have a look at the final one if you're doing a literature review for your experienced teacher application. As I said in the last video, it's hard to actually get some examples of these. So here's an example. I'm happy to share this. Another cool thing that I use throughout it is Mendeley. Mendeley is a program that allows you to keep track of all the different references that you use. And I didn't use all of its features, but it actually, once you load your PDF, so these are ones that I've loaded PDFs in, once you load your PDF in, it actually searches the repository for all the information. So most of the things I found auto-filled in here. Some things I had to go and then change because it wasn't quite right or it had pulled up the wrong thing. And then there was other things that I actually added in manually because I didn't have PDFs for, or it was a website or something like that. But it has all of your you can watch a folder, and then every PDF that you put in comes into this list. You can actually open the PDF within the program. You can highlight parts of the PDF within there. So it's all in the one thing. The best thing about this, as well as keeping a track of what you're actually using, is that when you're writing your, and I'll just do it on this one, when you're actually writing your literature review, you can at the end of a sentence, you've referenced a particular paper, you can insert a citation, and that just searches, you can, yep, there we go, it's in that one, and that gives you an in-text citation to go after the sentence or at the end of the sentence. Full stop goes after the citation. And you can insert a bibliography and it'll give you everything. So every citation that you've actually used will then come up in the bibliography. So you won't get have a citation in the body and forget to include that in the bibliography. And I think it also goes the other way, that if you've got something in the bibliography and you delete the citation, that it deletes it in the bibliography. Maybe it refreshes. I'm not entirely sure on that one. But yeah, so that was something that I found as a tool really helpful. And that was mentioned in the video that I did from the AIS. However, I wouldn't stress the helpfulness of that enough. So yeah, definitely get on that, and that was a free download. Yeah, so that's the end of my literature review. It took longer than I expected it to, and I expected it to take a long time. I'm not super confident with my writing. I'm not an English teacher. I've never really, and this is a bit of a fixed mindset here, but I've never really been good at writing. I wasn't good at school. I wasn't good at uni. I don't consider myself to be good now, but it's one of those things that you need to do, and I think I'm getting better at it. But yeah, feel free to download that literature review if you want to have a read of it. And I'll put up another video on the project proposal, will be the next one, which was also due today, and I've also now done. Go me. Peace out.